This is probably going to be the biggest breaking news of the entire day today. The Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, announced on X today on the 7th of January of 2026 that the U.S. Coast Guard just got done conducting two simultaneous pre-dawn boarding operations on vessels that were identified as part of the, quote, ghost fleet or shadow fleet of oil tankers, which are essentially the oil tankers that various countries around the world use to transport oil and sell oil, doing ship-to-ship transfers, doing flag changes, spoofing their AIS signals. It's basically their way of getting around sanctions on oil. So the two vessels that were involved was the motor tanker Bella 1, referred to as Bella 1, later renamed Marinera, which was boarded and seized in the North Atlantic Ocean. This vessel had been pursued by the U.S. Coast Guard since mid-December of 2025 when it initially evaded an attempted boarding in the Caribbean while en route to load oil in Venezuela. During the pursuit, the crew painted a Russian flag on the hull, renamed the ship Marinera, and registered it under Russian jurisdiction, home port reportedly Sochi. In an apparent bid for protection, it was tracked by the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Monroe, and the seizure was executed pursuant to a U.S. federal warrant or court warrant for sanction violations, primarily linked to prior involvement in Iranian oil trade, though it also tied to Venezuelan routes. Reports indicate that there was no resistance during the final boarding. The other tanker that was boarded was the motor tanker Sophia, which was boarded and apprehended in international waters near the Caribbean Sea, described as a stateless, sanctioned dark fleet motor tanker, and it was operating illicitly with its last port call in Venezuela or en route there. The U.S. Coast Guard is escorting it to a U.S. port, and the operation occurred without incident. Both operations were described by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem as meticulously coordinated and back-to-back, occurring within hours of each other. She also went on to praise the Coast Guard for two safe, effective boardings and shared footage of the actions, which you are seeing currently right now. Now, this is part of the intensified interdictions that the U.S. has been enforcing in the Caribbean under President Donald Trump, who announced a complete blockade on sanctioned tankers involved in Venezuela's oil trade in December of 2025. So the international reactions have been very interesting because Venezuela has historically denounced this as, quote, piracy or theft. And, I'm sure there's going to be a little bit more response from Russia as a result of this as well. But their response hasn't been super extreme just yet. Because I don't know for a fact if they were actually part of Russia's shadow fleet or if they just painted a Russian flag hoping that would, reduce the likelihood that the U.S. would want to board them. Who knows? But